Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the From Adversity to Abundance podcast. I am your host, Jamie Bateman, and I'm thrilled today to have with us Craig Thayer, who is a trauma surgeon, Dr. Craig Thayer. Craig, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. No, I'm thrilled to have you on. We were chatting beforehand, and I'm really excited to dive into your story here. For the listener out there, tell us kind of where you're coming from and what you're up to today.
Well, as you mentioned, I'm a trauma surgeon. So add to that, it's really a general surgeon that focuses trauma. But old school, I'm trained from head to toe. So it's if you've been shot in the chest and there's a hole in your heart, I can put a finger in it and get it closed. If you've got a bad gallbladder or a hernia or breast cancer or um, have had a stroke from carotid disease, I can clean that out. So um, different than people are trained now. So, and in transition, I was in California for I mean, I was born and raised there, and then about a year and a half or so ago, moved to Georgia, Northwest. So we're about 5 miles from the Tennessee border,
Okay.
and just waiting to get licensed in Georgia to begin that again. But in the interim, I got to be there for my grandmother's death, and she wanted me to write a book, which I did do, called Saved. So that gave me the chance. It was a blessing.
Yeah, I mean, there's always an opportunity behind every problem, right? So it sounds like you in the interim while you've been waiting, you took advantage of that downtime to create a book that I can't wait to read myself, called Saved. It sounds like it looks like it's very inspirational. So I can't wait to dive into your story and
Well,
learn more
thank you.
about what went into the book. So speak to us about, let's jump back. I mean, I know you're an inspirational speaker and a radio show co-host and motivational speaker. So I know there's something under all that,
Something, yeah.
something that drives all of that. So let's jump back. We can start at your birth. I mean, because I know that was a little bit different than
Yeah,
I would say
there's
that
a story there.
there's a
Yeah.
story there. So let's jump
So
back there.
so I always knew I was adopted, and uh my wife Stephanie was always interested in why my eyes look the way they do and my personality and those things. And so she wanted to do the research on finding my natural parents. And so uh in the process of doing that, she found them. So my natural mom lived in Michigan. She was pregnant, Catholic in faith, starting to show at 6 months, and she would have been shunned by the church. So she moved to California, Monterey, and had me for 10 days. I mean, I can't imagine the courage
Hmm.
she had to actually hold me, take care of me for those 10 days, and then hand me to an orphan. Back then, there wasn't foster homes, so it was an orphanage-like
Hmm.
place that you would go to, and I was adopted 9 months later. So, I go on medical mission trips, and I hear other people give testimonies of their faith and such, and I would have always begun that. Well, I was adopted by an Irish Catholic. She was born in Ireland, and completely all into Catholicism, and part of the adoption requirement was that I be raised that way. So got through
See.
confirmation, and yeah. So um,
What now, just looking back at that piece that you've shared thus far, I mean, what's kind of a one or two takeaways from that? Any lessons learned from, I mean, I know
yeah, I mean,
you don't remember all of that per se, but looking back now, what have you gained from that experience?
one, I could have never existed and done the things I've gotten to do in my life, but the bigger picture was, I do all these surgeries on these mission trips, but the biggest purpose, I think, was standing in front of 60 kids in an orphanage in Honduras and asked by Ricardo, who's a native Honduran, Craig, can you stand in front of these kids and tell them about your life and hope? And
Hmm.
man, I got on a knee and started. Luckily, I was out in front of about 30 people from our church and started to cry. And I'm like, yeah, look, I was an orphan like you,
Hmm.
and look what I became.
Sure. Yeah, that's
And you can do that. You have to have a
sure.
passion, but you can do it.
That's
So I think that's
yeah.
probably the biggest thing I've learned from that. But I've learned other things. I mean, Malcolm Gladwell, one of his 7 books, talks about a study out of Colorado of nature versus nurture.
Hmm.
And, I'm more like, it's interesting. I always felt like I was like my parents who I grew up with, but
Hmm.
behavioral wise, I'm more like someone off the street than I am the people who
Hmm.
adopted me. And I'm
Interesting.
obviously more like my natural family
Hmm.
who I've met. So it's interesting to go, okay, I'm like these people in their blood. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's wild. I know we're learning more and more, every day, every month, every year, as far as uh, genetics and all the testing you can do
yeah,
nowadays versus 10,
yeah,
15 years ago. But on the flip side, we're really only scratching the surface.
right,
So yeah, it's pretty, I don't know if that nurture versus nature debate's ever going to be, solved per se, but
right. Yeah,
that
but
is
yeah,
fascinating. So, okay. So walk us through kind of your, from childhood up until, I
yeah.
know you
So
dealt.
I think that the childhood, um, I always gave my dad the credit because he was so logical and you know didn't get angry, and my mom was had an Irish temper. But she was the sounding board. I'd argue with her to wit's end and probably take the opposite side the next week just to argue. And so then I get my hour and a half lecture from my dad about body language and tone and all that
Respect and
stuff. And so but it created an empath. And to add to that, my mom was an alcoholic.
Mm,
And when I was about 11, we were getting back from going somewhere. It was my sister and I, and my dad, and my dad opened the door and I could see through the door and there she was, which is in the book, but in an awkward position, asleep on the ground with
mm,
not a lot of clothes on. And I saw that. My sister didn't see it. But then after
mm,
that, we realized she was an alcoholic. And I
mm,
went to my first AA meeting. So I got
mm.
to listen to people, my name's John and I'm an alcoholic and this is my story. So
Oh,
I
wow.
think that had a huge impact on me being an empath, which it was demonstrated when I went on a water polo team trip to Hawaii in high school, and another Sanan Taisi, a friend of mine, and I were on a bus with a dad that was drunk and crying and
Hmm.
had his wallet open to his 2 kids, and we just had a chit chat with him and stayed with him. He got off the bus with us, and then a cop came by and said, "Don't give him any money. He's just going to spend it out." But we still
Mm,
did, and who
mm,
knows what the ripple of that was, right? So
hmm. So
from painful things, there's purpose.
sure, absolutely. So, and for more context, about how old were you when when your mother was on the floor?
11. Yeah.
11.
10,
Okay,
little between 10 and 11. Yeah.
gotcha. So, I imagine that was obviously pretty impactful for you.
Right.
Okay, so and then you went to AA meetings later, you're saying. Is that right?
With her, I would go to the
With
AA
her,
meetings.
you would
So
go,
yeah,
got
11,
it.
12, I was going to AA meetings just to see.
Wow.
She brought me along and then I could see what people's pains were and what they were doing. And then I think my next big event in life was my junior year, like the last week before finals. I ate a bunch of lasagna that my mom made and drank some milk, and that makes your intestines sometimes twist. And so all night long, I was thrown up on the bathroom floor on the second story above. And then they found me on the floor in the morning. And then next thing I know, I'm in the pediatric office and then ER and then NG2 by a really cute little nurse down my nose and into my stomach. And I had to man up and not admit that this was
Hmm.
horrible. And then off to the operating room. So they found that the intestine was twisted, untwisted it, took my appendix out, and then my coach thought I was just cutting practice and was like, "Where's Thayer? He's." And my best friend Andy was on the same court as me, so he knew I was in the hospital. Said, "Oh, he's in the hospital." Like my coach was like, "Yeah, right." But then he found out it was true. So I think that was the first time I got to be what I call the dark side, right? So I got to experience what patients got to experience. So
Hmm.
and I always felt like that just made me a better doctor.
Sure. So, and that was
That was
from, go ahead. That was junior year, and that was
ju-
from eating bad
yeah,
lasagna.
for me eating a whole bunch like probably 2 pounds of lasagna, and now
Okay.
weight dependent, it just allowed the intestine to twist.
I see. Sounds like your coach needed to be a bit more of an empath as well, right? Um,
Yes.
yeah,
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 he had a temper as well.
yeah. I was recently talking about that with my father, looking back on some of the coaches I had in my lacrosse career. Was like, yeah, I had a lot of screamers.
Yeah, no, I heard that
Over.
about you. So you're like water polo, but we can't go around the goal.
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
you're on
Well,
land,
yeah, yeah,
and
on
plus,
land, yeah,
yeah, all American.
no,
That's pretty cool. Yeah,
yeah, it was a fun time. My big lacrosse family that I come from, but yeah, it's I think not saying there aren't any hard coaches anymore, but it seems like back in the day that yelling and screaming was a little more acceptable and
yeah,
more of the
yeah.
kind of this the norm per se. But okay, so what happens? Walk us through, after high school.
So yeah, after high school, freshman year in college, uh, in the dark of night, the phone rings, and my roommate, it's just a 2 room suite or dorm room, and I could just tell something was serious because it was one word answers, and then he says, "It's for you, Craig." And so I walk over, and it was my dad, and I just remember, the words. I don't know how to tell you this. I don't know how to tell you this, but your mom passed away,
Hmm.
and just getting home to my dad, and seeing what he was going through, and then the guilt because he would get up. The routine was he would get up, make the coffee, put the coffee on her nightstand. He'd take a shower. He just noticed that something was weird when he was thinking about it in the shower, that she didn't immediately wake up and she would read a book and drink her coffee.
Mm. Hmm.
And then he came out, and sure enough, she wasn't breathing right, called 911, and
Mm.
she was pulseless, did CPR. And I can't imagine the trauma that he went through. And I know he said it. He said, I should have recognized that earlier. Like, Dad,
Mm.
you're not a doc. You don't know how to do these things. Someone
Sure.
told you how to do CPR over the phone. So
Right, right.
yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, I can, you know, yeah, I can see both sides, meaning, certainly if, I wouldn't blame your dad, but if I'm him, I can understand, blaming
yeah,
myself kind of thing.
yeah, yeah,
Um, so I imagine that was very traumatic for the whole family. So,
right.
and this was in college for you,
That
which
was
is,
freshman year.
yeah.
Not at the end. It was like probably it was just after, well, actually, it was 3 days after Mother's Day.
Oh,
So it'd
wow.
be about this time of year. So May 16th.
And
And
I don't want to
yeah,
be,
and
we don't want to, I don't want to drill down too much and, but uh, I, are we saying that it was alcohol related, the death
no, she
or,
hadn't been drinking for 8 years at that point.
okay.
So
Gotcha.
she's Irish. She had a strong family history of cardiac disease,
Mm,
and she smoked.
I
So
see.
she had unhealthy habits
Hmm.
that, yeah, that it wouldn't have prevented this, but it would have delayed it if she would have stopped smoking
Gotcha.
and been healthier, exercising and
Sure.
nutritional, and all that stuff. Yeah, things we know
So,
today.
yeah, absolutely. Now, okay, and unfortunately, I say this often, but we end up glossing over, kind of moving right along.
Yeah.
But so, what happens in your life after freshman year of
So
college then?
sophomore year, I'm in an off-campus dorm, and I'm coming back from a bacteriology lab, and I come around a corner on my 10-speed bike, and some girl pulls out in front of me. Now, granted, I'm on the wrong side of the road, so it's my fault, but I jackknifed my wheel and broke at the same time to not hit her. Did not hit her, but I went straight over the handlebars and hit my left side of my head and lacerated my ear. So I walk over, ask her if she's okay. Yes. And then the next thing I remember is sitting there with an ambulance in front of me, and I'm like, "Whoa, okay, I got knocked out." They take me in, they stitch my ear, they send me home back to the dorm. That night, I can't hear out of the ear. There's fluid coming out of it. I call the health center again, and it's some grad student. I'm like, "Is this normal?" And he goes, "I don't know. Do you think it is?" I'm like, "I don't know." So
Wow.
Oh yeah, so I get an appointment after my bacteriology midterm, which is at 3:30 to 4:30. Go over there, they X-ray my head, and I've got a skull fracture with
Wow.
spinal fluid coming out of my ear. So I get admitted for 2 weeks of a 10-week quarter. So quarters move quick. I've got organic chemistry, bacteriology, physics, biochem lab. I had like 18 units, and I dropped two. And again, I was told, like, when my mom died, you'll never finish. And I did. I got done with
Hmm.
that year, and
Nice.
didn't want to fall out of sync, because if you take your 128A, if you want to get through in 4 years, you got to be in series. So you
Mm.
got to be A first quarter,
Hmm.
B second quarter, C third
Yeah.
quarter. And if I would have had to move everything, I would have never finished in 4 years.
Hmm.
And so that was
And
screwed big
so
up.
at this point in college, what's your game plan for your life?
Yeah, I knew junior year in high school, Mr. Kalika was an anatomy physiology teacher, that the human body was so incredible that I needed to go into medicine. I
Okay.
already knew I'd like to help people. I was tutoring blind students in geometry, which is a challenge
Hmm.
because they can't
Sure.
see, and you're teaching
Yeah.
them geometry, circles and spheres, and
Sure.
yeah. So I got to think like them. And then I knew using my hands, just so surgery. But then I was cocky, wanted to be a cardiac surgeon or a neurosurgeon because they seem like they're the top dogs.
Sure.
Then that changed in med school, and the more challenging mentally was general surgery and trauma. So
I see.
I knew junior year in high school, that's what I wanted to do. So I was already passionate and devoted, and got to get through this biochem major. So I was learning the body at a cellular level, actually
Mm-hmm.
even below a cellular level, at a molecular level.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, and then, I mean, junior year, my dad goes to the ER. He's got fluid all around of his lung, and they drain it. It's bloody, and it comes back that he's got a stage 4 lung cancer. So now
Wow.
I'm volunteering to go back. Man, the miracle that year was I was in an off-campus dorm again. It was a five person, one student in the front, and then two in two rooms in the back. But there was this phone jack, and I don't know how many members or audience members
Mm-hmm.
remember having to pay for long distance calls, but
Mm-hmm.
I could plug into this, and I would call my dad every night, and it never appeared on our bill. I mean, I went to the office. I go, "Is it coming somewhere else? Are you guys getting these
Hmm.
charges to San Jose area?" And they're like, "No, we're not." So it was like, I was able to call my dad every night for an hour or two free.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy.
Um, that is crazy. So
Yeah,
and so you're okay. And so your dad was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer,
lung
right?
cancer. And then, uh, so during the summertime when I got home junior year, he was undergoing chemo and radiation. And then one morning, he was screaming from actually the night before. I watched him kind of fall on the couch. He stumbled. Well,
Hmm.
that's weird. He doesn't drink. There's nothing that would
Hmm.
do that. And then by morning, he was paralyzed from the waist down. So
Wow.
his lung cancer had spread to his spine, was pitching his spinal cord, and he couldn't control his bladder. He peed on himself. And I mean, I
Wow.
basically pulled our Toyota station wagon out and picked him up, carried him to the car, and then I carried him into the emergency room. I can't imagine the faces of the nurses seeing
Hmm.
this 20-year-old kid
Mm-hmm.
carrying his, skinny father from the chemo and the
Mm-hmm.
radiation in. But and then that's where he stayed for the last month of his life when he passed away.
Hmm. Wow. So, okay. So what's going through your mind at this point? You've now lost both of your parents who adopted you at a young age.
Right.
And you're still in college. Are you all alone, or what's your mindset at this point?
Well, I had a girlfriend, so that helped. But and my sister was, unfortunately, she was in high school with me freshman year, and then got in the wrong crowd sophomore year, got into drugs. Some that really messed up her brain. She's now got
Hmm.
schizophrenic
Hmm.
or schizophrenic and affect disorder, or maybe full schizophrenia, but and then memory. she's just got this big heart, but gets nervous. She can't think as well.
Mhm.
So that was a struggle. I volunteered to come and have you stay with her, but she's like, no, and she disappeared. She was homeless for a while, and I couldn't even
Mm.
find her for a while. So,
Wow.
um, but part of that was, she was there for when I started med school, and the professors said, look, you're going to lose your kids for the next 4 years because it's 4 quarters a year, it's year round. So, and they're going to be devoted to studying, and you probably won't get much time with them coming home, etc. And so she took that seriously, like, okay, I'm okay disappearing out of my brother's life for a
Mm.
period of time.
Mm.
But um yeah, so I just
How did
knew that I knew my parent, when you lose one parent, you realize your parents are not immortal. And then when you lose the other one, you realize, hey, I'm not all that immortal
Mhm.
either. But the
Mhm.
benefit to me was that I knew what I wanted to do. And I don't the
Yeah.
class at Davis was like 97 students. Probably a good 10% of those did it because of other reasons. It wasn't for them.
Mhm.
They're like parents were driving them, or
Mhm.
family or something, and they questioned what they were doing. And luckily, I just never had that
Yeah.
issue because they
So
were
that's
gone.
actually that's what I was going to drill down on is how did the your parents deaths affect your vision for your life or your why? So it sounds like if anything it just made it stronger.
Yeah,
And is that fair to say?
yeah, totally. Like I just said a little bit ago about all the guys. I was an all male floor freshman year. Oh, he's not going to make it back from his mom's death. He's going to stay
Mhm.
home. And I showed up and finished. And then sophomore year, I still knew all those guys and others because it was now co-ed, and but we all moved to the same off-campus dorms, and same thing. He's not going to finish the quarter. He's got a skull fracture.
Mhm.
Who knows if he can think?
Mhm.
So, and then just my dad and it just, I mean, and my dad encouraged me. So when he was alive, it was like, no, you have a purpose. I know this
Mhm.
purpose. You need to do it. So, but then going through med school, it wasn't necessarily looking back and look, I'm doing this for you, mom and dad.
Mhm.
Just I've just known I wanted to do that. I love helping people. So, and
Sure.
it hurts me now today that, America, the world are so ununited and passionate about things to the point that we're arguing instead of like listening to each other, etc. So,
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so walk us through from, I know it's a bit of a time period here, but from med school up into through today.
so, the challenges after med school, uh, were, well, to get into residency, you have to interview. So I had one with Georgetown, and I remember sitting on this bench outside, like all the students would, or prior interns, I suppose. And they were asking, "How are you going to pay for this?" And this guy leaned forward. I didn't know that until I went in there and knew that when you do that, when you lean forward in your chair, the chair's going to creak, and that's what I heard. So I just heard that noise. And then I heard him say cash, cold hard cash. And then I got in there, and I never examined this question before either. It was like, how are you going to pay for this? And I'm like, I suppose student loans, I'll do the military obligation thing every year. It's 2 years back. I'll just get it done. So, but I
Hmm.
hadn't thought about the finances.
Hmm.
And just getting into Davis was a miracle because I was waitlisted, and I thought my friend was calling me to pick him up, and it was Davis calling me, and is Craig Thayer there? And I'm like, oh, just a second. Or actually, I answered at Craig's taxi service, and then I said, yeah, he's here. Just a second. Same voice, no change. Yeah, what's going on? And I got in. So,
Nice.
but yeah, so and then just the time I inherited my parents' home in Cupertino and packed that all up. And when I was doing it, there was a pipe that broke downstairs. And when I was at this interview in San Francisco for Harvard,
Hmm.
I just felt a need of going home. And sure enough, this pipe, we had carpet on top of really beautiful hardwood floors, and the
Hmm.
carpet was
Hmm.
there. So I wouldn't crack my head as a boy growing up. And the floor you could see was starting to warp. And so I had called my best friend Andy, and he brought up a dad, and we're like, we got to rip this carpet out. And I'm sure the neighbors thought he's crazy. He's ripping the
Right.
carpet out of the house and putting it on the front lawn. What's going on over there? And so yeah, and then the experience of the insurance covered it, and then these guys did a horrible job, and we're going to carpet over it, thinking that
Mm,
we're just going to pull the wool over this kid's eyes.
mhm.
But I got back in time to say, no, you got to fix this. But yeah, it was a learning experience along the way. My
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
dad,
you're not ready for any of that, right? I mean,
yeah,
at
my
that point.
mom had passed away and left a $25,000 a life insurance policy that my dad invested with 8 other people as a fourth mortgage on an 8-unit apartment complex. And
Mm,
I now became an owner of my sister and I
okay.
became an owner of an 8-unit, one of 8 owners. And
Okay.
so we learned about bankruptcy foreclosure stuff, and that
Hmm.
we put in the price and we got it and kept it for a year, and then improved it and sold it and made a bunch of money. So
Nice.
yeah, I mean, yeah, there were positive experiences along the way for sure.
Sure. Yeah. So, and then, just career wise, and then we'll dive into some of the lessons learned and things. But, so what did your career look like kind of looking or thus far, looking back?
Yeah, yeah. So, like I said, there were I think 2 events in my life that stirred me away from what I thought I was going to do, which is cardiac and neuro.
Hmm.
Neuro was just working under a microscope. I mean, it's not just, but
Hmm.
it just wasn't
Wasn't as
as what I
appealing.
thought it was. So
Hmm.
in cardiac, I did an acting internship with a big group in Sacramento, and they were great guys. They taught me a lot of stuff, mentored me. They let me sew veins at the foot of the patient that they weren't going to use. And but I realized that they were very technical, and
Mm,
the thinking part was less so. So, and then the big experience was being at the VA in Martinez, California, and doing my 12 weeks of internal medicine as a third year medical student. And this guy's lung cancer bleeds into his lungs, and he's drowning.
mm,
And the
mm,
medicine guys didn't know how to take care of that. They just didn't have the procedural stuff to do it. And I said, I need to do a sport that I can do anything to save someone's life, and that was general surgery. So,
mm,
um, and that's why I went that way. And so, I mean, I was blessed to go to Davis for undergrad, Davis for med school, and then Davis for residency, which was 6 years. And yeah, I mean, it was just back then there was no 80-hour work week, so sometimes there was 160 hours of
mm,
time. You got a 15-minute power nap here or
mm,
there, and
mhm.
got through stuff. So, but I was just so privileged to be doing that kind of stuff. And I remember when I went to I think it was my 10-year reunion, they thought I was dead. My classmates from high school thought I was dead. I
Just
go,
because
no, med school
you
and
hadn't had
residency
any,
was,
yeah, no
yeah,
contact, very limited
yeah,
contact with everyone.
yeah,
Gotcha. I see. Um, so you're grinding, you put a lot of hours in, and but you're helping people in dire situations. I mean,
right.
um, and I presume doing well financially. Um, so, and then what led you to making the move to Georgia? Was that more of a family type decision,
Yeah,
or?
no, I think, well, ultimately it was a job offer, but my wife just wanted to get out of California. It was getting more
Gotcha.
restrictive. The
Hmm.
culture was changing.
Hmm.
The hospital was changing. That was probably the last straw
Mm,
with negotiating with them.
I
Just
see.
there was a new CEO, and the last one was kind of just, senioritis, so to speak. And so it was time. And so we were looking at Tennessee, not really
Hmm.
Georgia. And then I posted something on my Facebook about uniting America through patriotism and playing
Hmm.
the United States water polo team,
Hmm.
playing Czechoslovakia and Germany and Russia, and how uniting that is. We all bleed the same.
Hmm.
And so one of my friends who I hadn't spoken to in 40 years, last time I saw him was at end of middle school. He lived on my court. Then his family had moved. His dad was a pharmacist, and he swam on the same swim team that I did competitively, and then moved to Santa Clara because it was a big name. And then he went to a Jesuit high school, and I stayed public, and I stayed at De Anza. But we talked about old times, and then he asked what I did, and I'm like, he said he may need me. So when I came out there,
Hmm.
I had a job offer in a week and a half.
Nice.
So yeah,
Yeah, I love the sentiment about uniting everyone. I mean, we certainly need that more than ever right now in this
yeah,
country, right?
yes, we do. We do.
Um, so I do have some rapid fire questions here.
Okay.
And we'll I know you have some kind of we'll focus it around leadership if we can, as far as kind of leadership for CEOs or just leadership in general, because that's
Yes.
another thing we definitely need some more of today. So what's one thing that people misunderstand about you, Craig?
Um, that's a good question. I've never had that question asked, so I'm trying to think.
We,
They probably don't know where I've come from. They don't know the story.
hmm
They've just seen when I lead as a team.
hmm
So, you may be a quarterback and you get a lot of notoriety,
Sure.
but you can't throw the ball without someone catching it. You can't even throw it if no one's blocking for you. You can't,
Yeah.
you know. And so that being said, that also gives them skin in the game. And so when they
Mm,
do something that's not perfect, they personally feel bad about it. Not that I have to
mm,
correct them in any way. They already
hmm
know they didn't do that well for the team. So
Right.
I think being a team leader is key.
hmm Sure. Absolutely. And you think they a lot of people may see your leadership skills but not quite understand where that comes from. Is
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
The empathy, the feeling, putting myself in their
sure.
shoes,
Sure.
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. Looking back, what's one of your biggest failures? Maybe not the specific adversity, because we've talked about a lot of adversity, that different things that have happened to you, but what's one thing that you may view as a regret or a failure, or just something you'd like to have a do-over with?
Well, I don't know if I necessarily want to do over with, but I would say, I got married during residency, had 3 children, 2 girls and then a boy. Great lady. But then I got real sick. It coughed a hole in my heart and a bunch of pus around my lung. And that kind of freaked her out, and so she really wasn't the same after that, and not that that's my excuse, but and then my dad's dying, or my dad I'm selling my house. My dad already died. She never met my parents, but, um, just I think going through that divorce, if I could have
Mm-hmm.
rewound that, it's the worst
Mm-hmm.
financial decision you can ever make in your life because
Mm-hmm.
it divides you equally in less than half, so because 'cause you've got other expenses to pay, but, um yeah, just and then when you're in the courts for 8 years,
Mm.
you're always in an adversarial relationship, so you can never heal your wounds. So, I think if I
Yeah,
were to do that
that's
over, there'd be try to avoid that as much as possible.
sure. Um, and unfortunately, a lot of our listeners can likely relate to you on some level in that and going through that experience. But
Yeah.
now you say you got real sick. Was that? What was that exactly?
That was, like, 3 colds in a row,
Okay.
and, the 4th one, taking 2 weeks off, I was, my brother-in-law's wedding was in Sacramento at a big church, and I got to get up and talk about 1 Corinthians and what is love,
Mm-hmm.
and the priest even ribbed me, like, because I have a deeper voice, and it sounded, in the acoustics in the church, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, "You're not gonna replace me," I think is what he said, but then I got real sick we went down to Cabo for vacation in Mexico, and I got
Mm-hmm.
sicker and sicker, and my shoulder started to hurt, and I'm like, "We
Mm.
need to go." So, flew
Gotcha.
back, went to went to my hospital up in Placerville, and chest X-ray, I knew, "Oh, that's not good." Complete whiteout, probably exactly what my dad would have seen if he looked at his X-ray, and then but I have fever, so I know it's
Mm.
some infection of some kind. And then, they listened to my heart, and I've got this murmur that I've never had, so it's like,
Mm.
"Okay, do you want us to put a chest tube in you here, or we need to ship you down to Sacramento where the heart guys are because there's a hole in
Mm.
your heart somewhere doing something.
Mm.
It needs to get worked up." So I said, "No, don't put it. Someone will pull it out. I guarantee you, physicians, when they're patients, bad stuff happens." And yeah, sure enough, it did. So um, I go down to SAC. They drain my chest. That was fun because he'd numb up one spot, no, not good, numb up that spot. And these are the guys that I worked with when I
Mm.
was an acting intern in med school with them.
So you
And
chose not to take the immediate action, and you wanted to go more to the experts. Wait a little bit and go to the experts.
yeah,
Is that
yeah,
right?
get the
Yeah.
tube in there. They'll drain all this pus. It was 5 liters of pus out of my chest.
Wow.
Felt much better. And then they did an angiogram that showed that I'd coughed a hole from my aorta to my right atrium. So there was shunting blood
Hmm.
from the oxygenated side back to the venous side, which is not. So
Hmm.
I'm wasting. My cardiac output was 15 liters, which is 3 times normal.
Hmm.
And I mean, luckily I was still an athlete then playing water polo. So um
So
and
all said
then
and done, what is that? What does this mean for the lay person who?
yeah, so basically they did open heart surgery and closed the hole.
Wow.
And then they rolled me on my side, they opened my chest, got all the pus out of there and any residual stuff, and then put a tube in there. I was awake for that part. That's where I'm saying it's like
Wow.
docs always there's always complications. And then in recovery, the nurses are looking and there's a warming blanket that goes on the bed so you don't lose temp because you lose your body's ability to control
Mm.
its heat when you're under anesthesia. And so that is like in the shape of a waffle and circulates warm water through it. Well, it burned me on my hip. So they're
Hmm.
looking at this burn on my hip. And then I woke up and because I was on one side, all the junk in that side, gravity pulled it into the good lung. So they had to bronch me, put a camera down there and suck all the garbage out of the good lung.
Wow.
And yeah, so but then I was there for about four days post-op and then got out. But it was about 2.5 months before I was back in the operating room.
Okay. Wow. And this was kind of leading up to the divorce, is what you were saying before?
That event,
Hmm.
I've been told that event kind of just put
Hmm.
her
Hmm.
mind into a. What I've learned is that women really love feeling secure.
Hmm.
Security is
Stability,
very important. Stability,
security.
and so
Sure.
that scared the hell out of her.
Mm.
So
Sure.
that there wasn't this like I'm invincible
Right.
thought anymore because I just went down hard, and
I
I think
mean,
that just put her over
yeah,
the edge. And then
got it.
Um, yeah, and then my kind of grieving when I'm getting the house ready to sell in the year 2000,
Hmm.
um, just put me kind of into, a depression state, and
Mm.
it's hard to get rid of things. You pack up a house, and it's like
Sure.
anything you throw away, you feel like you're throwing a part of your family away. So, yeah, so it was just
Yeah.
hard, and that just
Sounds
led
like,
to, yeah,
yeah, does sound like that was a rough patch for sure. I'm glad we drilled into that though, as far as because
yeah,
it was
yeah,
worse than just a few colds
yeah, yeah. No,
thrown
it was a
together.
lot worse. Yeah.
Um,
So,
but
lovely
yeah,
strep bacteria.
that's
Uh,
some serious just health and personal adversity right there, and obviously it went and bled into your, no pun intended, but into your relationship, with your spouse, and that all these things are related. But um, so if you could have coffee with any historical figure, who would you choose?
oh, well, for me, it'd be Jesus, but yeah, if I could have a
That's good.
moment of conversation, yeah, it'd be Jesus.
Yep. Good answer. Um, plenty of plenty of good questions we can come up with, right?
Yeah, yeah, I know. These are good. These are good.
um, so if you were given $10 million tomorrow, what would you do with it?
I I'm here to serve and not be served. So my idea of abundance is making money to give away. I'm happy
Nice.
where I am. Moving to Georgia has reduced my overhead 40% to 40% of what it was.
Wow.
The house we got is under half of what we paid for in California. So we are set up beautifully. Um, and I mean to set up operating rooms around the world. I'm going to Uganda in October to end of September and October to talk with folks to try and set up operating rooms or train their people, whatever I can do. Just be a physician and practice medicine there. They need that. So the abundance would be to serve, the homeless is a huge thing right now. That's a bigger problem than I'm able to take care of, but there's people out there working on that. So yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
And what have you learned through either your personal adversity or your career? Any parts of your career, but from a leadership perspective, we've already touched a little bit on this. But what are one or two lessons you've learned from a leadership standpoint that you could share with maybe the CEO or the entrepreneur out there?
I think in general, it's just that there's always hope. There's going to be trials. I mean, learn to embrace those trials. If
Hmm.
it's a staff member, you've got to fire, a
Hmm.
colleague that you have to
Hmm.
let go. Um, be an empath, put yourself in their shoes, and then and work with them. You know,
Hmm.
I think we've got a couple of generations that like millennials like a lot of boundaries and parameters to work, and they work.
Hmm.
They're not as motivated, but that's just them. And then Gen X just wants to belong, or Gen Z, I mean, just wants to
Hmm.
belong and function and do stuff. So, you know, letting them feel that way is key.
Sure. So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff there for sure. Um, how have you changed your leadership style over the years? Has that changed at all?
Yeah, I think like what I said, I realize there's trials and it's like embrace them. Take,
Hmm.
not necessarily joy, but just realize that this is a learning experience for me. It's
Hmm.
a learning experience for the team. Uh,
Sure.
just like our kids, they learn more by what we do than what we say. I
It's
think I
true.
heard you say in a podcast, my kids
Yeah.
don't listen to me. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's
So
yeah. They're
yeah,
too busy watching what you do, right? To listen to what you
yeah,
say.
yeah. So watch what you do, and people will learn, and then it'll get fixed. And there's seasons of things too. So
That's a really good point. Yeah. Life definitely has seasons, so your approach needs to adjust and your perspective needs to adjust based on the season that you may be in.
right.
So yeah, that's important to remember for sure. So other than waiting on your medical license to transfer over, it sounds like, what is one challenge that you're facing in your career or you um, business or that type role right now?
Yeah, that's a great question because I mean, like I said, I was blessed to know at 16 what I will call my first calling, and that was to use my hands and my mind to be a trauma surgeon, general surgeon. And now I'm feeling a pull now to unite people. And again, in the book that I wrote, there's a picture when I'm in Haiti in front of a United Nations helicopter, and my head's blocking out some key letters, but it says on the far right, "U," and the end's it's such an old helicopter, gone. And then it says "Unite," and then TION, which makes it an action, right? So unite, you need to unite people, corporations, countries, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm feeling, and again, the book was more my grandmother. You need to do this to inspire and give hope
Mm-hmm.
and make people understand. Look, I'm on an artificial pedestal as a trauma surgeon, um, that I bleed too. So, and that I can help. So, any
Mm-hmm.
way I can get on a stage or in a boardroom or whatever to
Yeah.
teach or to inspire, to motivate, and give hope. Uh, that's my latest calling.
Yeah, so one of my questions, I don't always ask it, but one of them is what occupation other than your own would you like to try? Um, so you kind of hinted at that a little bit. Is there anything that comes to mind when I ask that?
My second oldest son is he's an entrepreneur himself. He does cutting boards, so
Okay.
he's got a planer. I love working with my hands, so it's
Mm. Hmm.
it's it's going to be serving people in some way, either
Sure.
volunteering or or making things for people, like cutting boards or, something that I feel like I'm serving other people.
Yeah, I think that I just finished a book about mental health, which is a whole huge topic in and of itself. But I mean, at the end of the day, this stuff, physical health and mental health, is all related, and one of the key pieces is purpose, and another key piece is relationships, right? And so you've clearly shown that you're driven by serving others, and um, that service adds purpose to your life as well. So it's not all about stockpiling as much cash, or
Right.
many accolades as possible.
Right.
So that's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Talk about your book more. Tell us more. It's called Saved. You said your grandmother inspired you to
Yeah.
write it. Tell us more
Yeah.
about the
So,
book.
so, it's just, it's a story of my life, from, before I was even here, my natural mother and finding that family, to almost present day. So, it talks about, it really begins in a dedication with her and just the miracles that I've seen in my life. And some of them are
Hmm,
photos that can't be explained. And those are in the
hmm,
book. There's a
okay.
picture of me in a closet in Honduras where the only light source is a window across from me to my left. And there's a light coming off of a 4-drawer metal filing cabinet that can't be explained. I'm in the shade, but my
Hmm,
face is lit. And my my friend Jason Guzman, sitting across from me, had taken the photo, handed me the phone, and said, "Look at this." It was black and white, no flash. And I go, "Do you see what's on this?" And I hand the phone back to him, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, look at this." And so, and there's another one that same trip, different camera of light coming off of some skin, and the patient's draped with a paper drape, and there's this glow over the where the incision is going to be. So, um, just those miracles, they're all in this book. So, and
hmm,
then it's a miracle that I was never put in jail. So there's
hmm,
a whole chapter on pranks. Actually, there's two
hmm.
on pranks that I pulled in my life. So it adds a little levity to some of
Sure.
the adversity. So,
Yeah, we definitely need levity in life, right?
yeah.
Um, so and I presume we can find it on Amazon.
Yeah, just click on Amazon, put my name in there, Craig Thayer, T as in Tom, Hayer. I always wondered why my dad would say that, and then when I started being older and making phone calls, "Oh, fair? No, no, it's not with an F, it's the T."
Right.
So, if you just Google my name and put "saved" in there, it should pull up the book, and then you can order it. I just finished the Audible yesterday. Well, there may be some clips that I have to redo, so that's being edited right now, so which is a challenge because one of the parts that's brief at the very beginning, I also didn't realize this until our youngest son was diagnosed with dyslexia. I always knew I had ADHD. So,
Mm,
but um, I never thought of, I just knew I read slow. So
mm.
every single exam, I'd count the number of questions and the time allotted and sweat that more than the exam. And it was distracting. But I obviously got through those because look at where I am.
Because here you are. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
you do the audio yourself?
I did. I
Yep.
Facebooked and I said, should I do one? And then if I do, should it be me? And it was 100%. No, that's not true. One of my high school buddies said, no, you should get
You shouldn't.
Coyote to do it. And he does have a great voice, but
You should get that with the priest at the ceremony, that get him to do it.
yeah,
No.
yeah, yeah, I'll send him a copy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You didn't steal his job, but you're now
No, no, yeah, yeah.
no, that's funny.
It's funny.
Um, so the audio version is going to be out soon.
Yeah, it'll be out. It'll be on, it'll be an Audible choice
Nice.
in Amazon. So
Sounds great. So saved with an exclamation mark at the end. Craig Thayer. What have we not covered that you wish we had?
uh I don't know. I always like to, how I can help you. So if there's down the road, I mean,
Sure.
I volunteer. I've had 14 years of stupid education after high school. And so it's like when I get to interact with people like you,
Hmm.
I think you have my phone number from contact stuff,
Yeah,
but if there's ever a question you got, family, friends, whatever's going on, feel free to call me. So
I appreciate it.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, so fantastic. Craig Thayer, thank you so much for joining
yeah.
us. It's been really good, and looking forward to reading your book. And so if the listener out there would like to get a hold of you, what's the best way?
Okay, so I have a website which is just craigthayer.net.
Yep.
Or you can Facebook me. I'm Craig Tank Thayer. Originally, it was just Tank Thayer because I was trying to hide, and then my wife wanted me to put my first name in there, and then a lot of people like hated that my other nickname from playing water polo was Tank. So all of the story, but um, yeah. So Craig Tank Thayer in Facebook, and then you can message me uh, anytime.
Sounds great. So not Frank the Tank, Craig the
Yeah,
Tank. Um,
Craig the Tank. Yeah,
fantastic. Well, Craig, thank you so much. I really appreciate you spending your time with us today.
yeah. Thank you, Jamie. It's an honor.
Appreciate that. And to the listener out there, we appreciate you spending your most valuable resource with us, and that is your time. And don't forget to check out our new podcast website, adversity2abundance.com. It's the number two, adversity2abundance.com. Thanks, everyone. Take care.